You're watching BCTV. We're all about Branford. You're watching BCTV, Branford Government Television, a service of Branford Community Television. This program is brought to you in part through the support of the town of Branford.
Okay, we'll call this meeting of the Branford Planning and Zoning Commission to order. It is Thursday, May 15, 2025. I've got about 7:04 p.m. We'll start by introducing members of the commission and staff. Commission member Joe Chadwick. Joe, are you here?
Joe Chadwick is present.
Thank you, Joe. Commission member Fred Russo. Fred, are you here?
Fred is present.
Thank you, Fred. Commission member Marcy Pelusi. Marcy, are you here?
Marcy's here.
Thank you, Marcy. Commission member Massimo Liguri. Massimo, are you here?
Massimo's here.
Thank you, Massimo. And Commission member Sharon Hutner. Sharon, are you here?
Sharon Hutner is here.
Thank you, Sharon. Our staff this evening is our town planner, McKeel Wackers. McKeel, you're here?
I'm here.
Thank you, McKeel. Our zoning enforcement officer, Jane Ellis. Jane, you're here? Yep, you're muted, Jane, but
Zero right now. Jane is here.
thank you, Jane. And our clerk recording secretary lurking in the background is Michelle Martin. I am Chuck Anders, chair. I'll ask our secretary to read the notice of public hearing. Fred.
Yes. Legal notice, Town of Branford. The Planning and Zoning Commission of the Town of Branford, Connecticut hereby gives notice to public hearings to be held on Thursday, May 15th, 2025 at 7 p.m. by remote technology to consider the applications listed below. Information regarding how to participate in the public hearings will be provided on the Commission's meeting agenda that will be posted on the town's website at least 24 hours prior to the meeting. Application number 25-4.1, special exception for an accessory apartment located at 22 Beechwood Road, Sean Jeffries, applicant and owner. Application 25-4.2, special exception for grading, section 6.8, for a single-family home, 301 Maple Avenue, LLC, care of Steve Dostey, applicant and owner. At said hearings, all persons will have the right to be heard. Copies are on file in the Planning and Zoning Commission's office at the Planning and Zoning Department, 1019 Main Street, Branford, Connecticut 06405. Written communications may be sent to the above address or to planning and zoning at branford-ct.gov. Branford Planning and Zoning Commission, C. Andres, chairperson.
Chuck Anders, chair. Thank you, Fred. We'll follow our normal format for public hearings, which is that the applicant will go first, with the applicant and or its consultants making the presentation describing the project. After that, we turn it over to commission members and staff, typically hear a summary of a staff report and open up for questions and comments from commissions. And after that, we'll get to the public portion where the public can speak and ask questions or give any comments. We'll ask that you identify yourself for the record before speaking. In a moment, I'll ask Jane to go through that process of how to participate. And after the public portion, the applicant is allowed to respond to any of the public comment, and we may have further questions and comments from commission members or staff. We may or may not close the public hearing, depending on how it goes. And with that, we'll start with our regular agenda. And before we get into that, Jane, can you just run through the process for participating on this Zoom meeting?
Absolutely. So how you can participate? Only if your computer has a microphone, two-way communication, then during a public hearing, if you wish to speak, press the raise hand in the participant window at the bottom of the screen. If you do not have a microphone, you will need to call in on the phone. To speak, press *9 and raise your hand. The information for how to dial in is on the agenda. During a public hearing, if you do not wish to speak, you may type your comments into the chat feature. We will do our best to monitor this feature. However, we would always prefer you to raise your hand and speak. Those joining us, those of you joining us a computer with Zoom software should note that typing in your full name to view the meeting only and not speak is not required. A pseudonym may be used instead. Again, if you wish to speak, you will need to give your name according to the Public Act 22-3. All instructions are on the agenda if you require more information, and please always state your name before speaking. Thanks.
Chuck Anders, Chair. Thank you, Jane. With that, we'll go through the items that set forth on our agenda. The first item of our public hearings. It listed is Kim McCabe and Charles Watts. That's for 38 Howard Avenue, special exception for grading. That's a public hearing that we opened, I believe, back on our April 3rd meeting, and it's been continued to our June 19th meeting. And so we're not proceeding with that this evening. Sharon, did you have something?
I have a question with that. I mean, I did read the letter that was received from the neighbors. So is that a decision that's already been made, or can we discuss that, or what's procedurally correct?
That is a decision that has made at the last meeting when it did come up. We continued it to June 19th, and I know I read the letter too, and it was distributed. This is a letter, I believe, from the neighbors that is a concerned citizen. Is concerned about the timing of it, and then she did ask that we do not waive the deadline for the application. And the short response is we have not waived the deadline for the application. That the extension is within the time frame that has been provided by statute. It was requested by the applicant because a mediation is scheduled. This matter also involves some pending litigation. There's a mediation scheduled for June 11th. And so it's scheduled for our June 19th meeting. And the hope is that maybe it's a false hope, but that perhaps the issues could be, I don't know if they're settled, but perhaps narrowed through that mediation process. And it seemed that was the reason for the continuation, is that that there was this pending mediation, and we still had time to get the public hearing going within the statutory time frame, and it made sense. But the concerns, I think we hear the concerns, we recognize that, and we're not waiving any deadlines. This is within that. This is frankly the last day. It will be open on that date. It will not be continued after that. So
great.
That's where we are. So
Thanks for the explanation.
sure, thanks. So with that, then we'll move on to item number 2, which is Sean Jeffrey, applicant and owner, 22 Beechwood Road. This is a special exception for an accessory apartment. Is the applicant ready to proceed with that?
Good evening, commissioners. Jim Preddy, Criscolo Engineering, here at 420 East Street, Main Street in Branford, representing Jeffries at 22 Beechwood. This accessory structure was approved by you folks back in June, I believe, after receiving variance and health department approval. We received a special exception from planning and zoning for a structure higher than 15 feet. In that, since that time, they have discovered that they actually have a need for a family member to possibly move into an ADU at their house. So we're really looking just for, I guess, a use approval. Nothing physically is changing. The building's not moving. We did actually go back to the health department and get approval to connect now the barn to the septic. And that also included state health approval for a central system, because you have 2 different buildings coming to one system. I did receive the staff report from John Guskowski. and it looks like he believes that we meet all the special exception criteria. There's just a couple of standard recommendations at the end. I think this is a pretty simple application.
Checking to share. Thank you, Ms. Preddy. I know that Ms. Goskowski prepared the report, but I believe he's not with us this evening. And Nikhil, that you're prepared to summarize that for us.
That's correct. So Nikhil Wackers, town planner. So John Goskowski sent out a staff report and an amended staff report as well, recommending that we support the special exception. It meets the special exception criteria. There are 3 conditions that we seek to attach to this approval. The first is to reduce the glare in any proposed light fixtures shall be demonstrated by meeting the IES full cutoff definitions, and the language is there in the staff report. The second item is that the owner of the accessory dwelling property must submit an affidavit to the commission that the one dwelling unit on the property shall be occupied by the property owner. And then item 3, prior to issuance of a certificate of zoning compliance, that the accessory apartment must file a deed restriction on the land records requiring a unit if it's to be rented below prices that would, in order to qualify as an affordable housing unit as defined by Connecticut General Statute Section 8-30G. Happy to answer any questions based on those comments.
Checking to share. Thank you, Mr. Wackers. Questions, comments from commission members before we open up to the public? Hearing none, let's go ahead and open up to the public. Does any member of the public wish to comment? Remember Jane's instructions about raising your hand. Jane, do you see anyone? Looks like we got...
I don't see anybody.
I do see... Who do you got there?
This is Sean Jeffrey. We're the owners.
Looks like the applicants.
Yes.
Right.
So let me lower my hand here. We just want to thank you for supporting this ADU application.
Right. My name is Teresa, and so my parents live in Ohio, and my dad's not doing well. He has dementia, and we're not sure. He's qualified for hospice. And recently when I visited them, my mom indicated when he passes, she'd like to come move with us. So that's really the pivot of why we're looking for the ADU.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jeffrey and Teresa. Are there any other members of the public wish to comment? Jane, you see anybody?
We do not, but we have one person that wrote in from 27 Beechwood, Steve Margolis, and he says, I approve this project.
Chuck Anderson, thank you, Jane. So you don't see anyone else, Jane? I don't see anyone.
I do not see anybody else.
Okay, then we can close the public portion. Any further comments by the applicant? Mr. Preddy?
No, I think we're all set. This is pretty simple. We've done a number of these, the standard conditions for every one of them, really. Yeah, I think we're okay.
Great, thank you, Ms. Preddy. Any further questions by commission members or staff? Hearing none, then we'll close this matter as a public hearing, and this is something I think we can take up in a little bit. Thank you, Ms. Preddy. Thank you, applicants.
Thank you.
Next item is item number 3 on our public hearings, which is 301 Maple Ave LLC, care of Steve Disty, applicant and owner. This is a special exception for grading. Is the applicant ready to proceed with this one?
Yeah, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Jim Galligan. I'm from Naferson Young Engineers. We're located at 1355 Middletown Avenue in Northford, representing Steve Dosty in this application. Mr. Dosty bought the house at 301 Maple. It had been abandoned for several years. He cleared a lot of the brush and so on in the back of the yard. He also cut cut down several trees that had fallen in the yard. He has since brought in topsoil and seed to try and establish a lawn in the front and a lawn in the back. This application was reviewed and approved by the Inland Wetland Agencies for the town of town of Branford, and so we're here in front of you tonight because of the under the guise of grading. There really was no change in elevation on any of the property. Mr. Dostie brought in about a mason dump size load of topsoil to reestablish lawn in the front and reestablish lawn in the back, in accordance with the inland wetlands approval. There are several plantings that need to be installed along a fence line that is going to be constructed along the top of the bank that's in the back of the parcel, and so that's so we're here in front of you seeking your approval for a special exception for I guess it's called grading, but like I said, there was really no change in grade in for the address.
Chuck Anders here. Thank you, Mr. Galligan. McKeel, do you want to summarize Mr. Guskowski's staff report on this one?
Certainly. So just to be brief, this is a retro active approval for clearing and grading. It's primarily the restoration and clearing of the formerly abandoned and derelict property, so it was a net benefit. So therefore, the findings were that subject to compliance and the conditions, so there are 3 of them. The commission finds that the testimony and the use is consistent with the special exception criteria, and the approval applies to all the alterations proposed in the site plan that was submitted. The conditions are that 1, all conditions of any previous approval shall remain in force and effect as they may still apply. 2, erosion control measures shall be installed and maintained throughout the construction to the satisfaction of the CEO, town planner, or his designee. And 3, the applicant shall provide a written narrative of the erosion and sedimentation control measures, including installation and maintenance details. We recommend approval. You consider it.
Chuck Anders here. Thank you, Mr. Wackers. Any questions, comments from commission members before we open up to the public? Sharon.
No, this is Sharon Hutner. I just don't understand why this didn't come to the Planning and Zoning first. Was it because the Wetlands Commission approved it? I guess I'm just not understanding the process.
Okay, Jim Galligan from Nafis and Young. There is a small water course in the back of the parcel, so the procedure, I guess, that we followed was go to wetlands first, secure wetlands approval, and then come before this commission to secure this commission's approval.
That was the advice that you got from the town?
That's correct.
Okay.
Sure. And Chuck Anders here. And I assume, Mr. Galligan, this is an after the fact approval, so the work's already been done, correct?
Yes, sir. That's correct.
So,
the silt fence and so on is all up. The only thing left to be done is to install the plantings that were required by the Inland Wetlands Agency.
And my assumption, Chuck Anders, chair again, is that this was inadvertent, that just slipped, that you didn't realize that you needed to get the permit in advance. Is that?
Yeah, Mr. Dostie came in and his perception was that it's just some brush in the back and I can cut that down, and there were a couple of trees that actually one of them was resting on the house itself. So the fact that it was the property was in a bit of disarray, he perceived it as cleaning up the property, and just didn't realize that there's a procedure for that type of activity.
Thank you, Chuck. Thank you, Mr. Galligan. Any other questions, comments, Marcy?
Yeah, I just need a little refresher. Mason dump is 5 yards of material about, or you say the trash?
Jim Galligan from Nafis and Young. Mason dump is a 6-yard dump.
Okay, so and I'm trying to remember the regulation, but I thought that you didn't have to come. Well, if 200 I don't know if it was cubic yards or square feet of disturbance to the grading. Isn't that the threshold for requiring our review?
Well, I think part of the reason why we're here is because of the activity prior to notice to the town.
The activity, I'm sorry, prior, I mean, I know you have to get the wetland approval, but I'm just saying, I thought the thing that triggered planning and zoning was there's a statement about grading review for 200 cubic yards, and I'm not sure that a mason dump meets that. So I'm just trying to understand why you're here, I guess is my question.
Well, we've been directed to. That's as best as I can respond.
But do we know what the reg says exactly? Could somebody like just educate me
Yeah.
on the regulation?
So the trigger is any activity within 100 feet of a inland wetland and
Oh,
water.
okay.
So it's not the amount, it's the distance.
But if there were no wetlands, there is an amount trigger, right?
Correct.
And is that 200 cubic yards? Did I remember that correctly?
It differs based on the size of the property.
Okay. Well, maybe you can update
Yeah.
me on that, outside of the meeting. That would be appreciated. Just so I can
Okay.
understand. Thank you.
Chuck Engineer, thank you, Marcy. Any other questions, comments from commission members or staff before we open up to the public? Hearing none then, any member of the public wish to comment? Jane, you see anyone?
Not seeing anybody? No? Anybody?
So I can't figure out how to put up my hand here.
Please state your name.
My name is Bill Chapin, and I am on the board of directors of the Branford Land Trust. So I guess our concern is how would this impact the wetland that we own, which is across the street. And since the work is already done, I guess we know, or its impact has already been felt. But that was our concern and why I'm attending tonight. Both in terms of water runoff, sediment, and other pollution that might come along with any disturbance of the property adjacent to the stream across the street from our wetland.
Chuck Engineer, thank you, Mr. Chapin. Mr. Gallagher, you care to address that?
Yeah, sure. Well, the Wetlands Commission went to great lengths to make sure that we put a vegetative strip at the top of the bank adjacent to the water course to try and prevent any type of long-term impact to the wetlands related to fertilizers and pesticides. Certainly, establishing the lawn in the front and in the back will help stabilize the property and stabilize the turf in the area. And lastly, there'll be no increase in runoff caused by the application because there is no increase in impervious surface.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Gallagher, Mr. Chapin. Are there other members of the public wish to comment? See anyone, Jane?
Seeing anybody? No.
Okay. Then I think we can close the public portion for this public hearing. Are there any further comments by the applicant, Mr. Gallagher?
No, I think we've covered it. Yeah, I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Any further questions, comments, or from commission members or staff? Sharon?
It's Sharon Hunter again. I'm just concerned if there's going to be a lawn established, what kind of fertilizer and pesticides are going to be used on that lawn if it in fact is adjacent to the wetland. So I know, that there are organic fertilizers out there that can be used, but I don't know what the applicant how the applicant feels about it.
Well, I think that if you look at all the properties in the town of Branford, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of properties adjacent to wetlands where they're normal call them Home Depot or Lowe's type of fertilizers and pesticides are applied. I don't think that this applicant will apply anything any different than the rest of the members in the community. The especially the property in the rear is well shaded, so fertilizers will probably be less often used because the grass will grow rather naturally, and the property in the front is a significant amount of distance away from the water course.
Sharon Hutner again. I understand that Home Depot and the residents of Branford use various different kinds of fertilizers and pesticides, but that doesn't make it healthy for our environment. So I would encourage all of the residents in Branford to reconsider the kinds of fertilizers and pesticides that they use for the health of our wildlife and for our residents and for our wetlands. Thank you.
Chuck Incher, thank you, Sharon. Any further questions, comments from commission members or staff or the applicant? Hearing none, then we will close this matter as a public hearing. And again, this is something we can probably address in a little bit. Thank you, Mr. Gallagher.
Thank you very much.
With that, I think that completes the public hearing items that we have on our agenda for this evening. So let's go back to item number 2. First one, that's 22 Beechwood Road. That was the special exception and accessory apartment. McKeel, I'm wondering if you can you put the proposed finding and conditions on the screen?
Certainly. You see them?
Yes. Yeah, we can see them. Yeah, the proposed findings. Yeah, we can see the first page, the bottom of the first page, and then
yeah.
Right. So you want to? I know you reviewed it in the public hearing, and it's being displayed to us now. Just stating that for the record, the findings state. I'll just read the finding. Subject to compliance with the conditions listed below, the commission finds, based on the testimony and application materials presented, that the proposed use of the property is consistent with the special exception criteria per section 9.8 of the zoning regulations. And I think indicated the conditions are the standard conditions. Number 1 is the glare lighting condition. I won't read it, but it's in our staff report that has been mailed to us and that we have. Number 2 is the affidavit that the owner will live in one of the dwellings on the property. And number 3 is the affordable housing deed restriction as well. So, and again, we have that language displayed in front of us and we have it. It's been sent to us. So does anyone have any questions and comments from commission members? I think I know Joe Viusto is out, and Mikhail, did you say who was up? Was it is it Massimo?
Massimo is scheduled to be the seated alternate.
Okay.
David Dwyer is missing.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So Massimo, you'll be voting on this. Okay. So, okay. So then does someone want to make a motion to approve the application by adopting the findings and conditions in the staff report that was just displayed to us?
Fred Russo will make that motion.
Okay. We'll give the motion to Fred and the second to Joe Chadwick. Any further discussion? All those in favor, Joe Chadwick.
Joe Chadwick is in favor.
Fred Russo.
Fred Russo's in favor.
Marcy.
Marcy's in favor.
Massimo.
Massimo's in favor.
And the chair is also in favor. So that application is approved. And good luck. Good luck with the parents. That's I hope they can move in. Hope that goes well. So let's turn then to the next one, which is 301 Maple Avenue. That's the one we just heard, the 6.8 grading application. And McKeel, is that something you can pull up on the as well, the proposed finding and conditions on that one? And again, I think it looks like Massimo, you're on this one. So it's the regular members. And it's Joe Chadwick, Fred, Marcy, Massimo, and myself. So it looks like, again, the pretty standard conditions. This is an after the fact application. Is there any discussion before we move the vote? I know there were a couple of questions raised from the land trust and so forth. It looks like wetlands has approved this. And there were some sound like conditions for the wetlands that were being safeguarded. I understand there's general use of fertilizer. That's could always be a concern, but that's kind of a bigger issue, I think. Any other thoughts from anyone before we move forward with this? Marcy?
Okay. Yeah, so I mean, I think our purview, the wetlands took care of the issues that, I mean, I don't disagree with Sharon, but I think those are issues that are really handled by wetlands, and they're addressing it with the shrub layers to probably help filter any treatments that they may use on the lawn. I realize that I do agree that we need to try to take care of our wetland systems, but, I think our purview is a little bit more with the grading is what triggers it. And I trust that the wetlands were, making those considerations. I think, there's a movement in general that is, putting more products on the shelf that are more environmentally sensitive, and hopefully these owners would choose to use them. But I'm not sure that we can dictate that in a application legally is, I guess, really what I'm asking Chuck. I mean, we can't legally dictate that they not use pesticides on their lawn, can we?
Chuck Anders here. I've seen more complex applications where there's very sensitive wetlands, where there are, particular fertilizing plans. There are, plans that have to be submitted that are part of that. But I wouldn't put this in that category. I sort of agree that the buffers and the wetlands approval. I mean, I don't think we need to duplicate wetlands job. I do agree with what you said, Marcy, that this is mainly a grading issue. That's the main reason it comes before us. And maybe the proximity to wetlands is another reason. Otherwise, we probably wouldn't even be hearing this, but that's what's triggering this. If the concerns are the wetlands, the impact of wetlands, I'm confident relying on the measures taken by the Wetlands Commission.
Okay, was my perception as well.
Right. Any other commission members, staff have any comments before we move on this one? Not then, does someone want to make a motion that we approve this application by adopting the 2 findings and the 3 conditions in the staff report? And again, they're presently, I think McKeel is presented in front of us, and they're in the reports that have been mailed to us.
I'll make that motion.
Motion to approve made by Marcy. Is there a second?
Chadwick seconds.
Second by Joe Chadwick. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Joe Chadwick?
Joe Chadwick is in favor.
Fred Russo?
Fred Russo's in favor.
Marcy Pelusi?
Marcy's in favor.
Massimo?
Massimo's in favor.
And the chair is also in favor. So that application is approved. That brings us then to old business. We have a number of items in old business coming up. And again, we have 4 items that are on our scheduled for public hearings, I believe. At our next meeting, items number 1 and 2 are on one site at 642 Main Street, an IHOD amendment and special exception, and 3 and 4. One is a coastal site plan for an in-ground swimming pool at 28 7th Avenue, and 4 is special exception, another 6.8 application at 101 Hotchkiss Grove Road. So again, we have a public hearing scheduled for that on at our next meeting. So we will consider that and hear the evidence on those at the next meeting. So that brings us down to new business. These are just items that have just recently come in, I believe. And looks like items number 1 Actually, it looks like 2, 3, 4, and 5 are all the same application, relates to a 3-lot subdivision. So that'll be coming up. And the first one relates to a special exception for automotive tinting. Again, we'll need to schedule a public hearing for that. I mean, the way we've done it, McKeel, is it's left to the discretion of staff in consultation with the chair. I think you mentioned that you think the June 19th is when we'll probably schedule these.
That's correct.
Okay. So we'll likely hear those items at our June 19th meeting. It brings us then to minutes then from our May 1st meeting. I think those were sent out to us and also circulated by Michelle. And I don't know if anyone had any corrections or comments. And if not, does someone want to make a motion with respect to those minutes?
Fred Russo will make that motion.
Fred Russo makes a motion to approve the minutes of our May 1st meeting. Is there a second?
Marcy will second.
Second by Marcy. Any further discussion? Joe Chadwick,
Joe Chadwick is in favor.
Fred Russo,
Fred Russo's in favor.
Marcy Palusi,
Marcy's in favor.
Massimo,
Massimo's in favor.
and Chair is also in favor. So those minutes are approved. That brings us then to correspondence. Any correspondence, McKeel?
Yes, there was one letter regarding deposit of dredging by Army Corps of Engineers at a site just off the coast of East Haven. It's just a notification letter that was required to be sent out, and it's available if staff want to see it or commission wants to see it.
Chuck Anderson, thank you, McKeel. So let's move on then to other business. We have planners report. McKeel, what do you got for us?
Yeah, thank you. So after last month or last 2 weeks ago with the questionnaire, that was sort of the last piece I was putting together into a report looking at the zoning code and putting together sort of a framework for exploring possible planning aspects for the commission and for staff moving forward. The report, which I had mailed out by email on Monday, you have all had it. I'm not going to do a big presentation on it because I think it's still premature to do a presentation. I'm going to do sort of some high levels summaries and sort of my thinking around this and what I sort of still need from the commission before we do any deep dive into what's in that report. There's a lot in there. A lot of that is more has to do with me getting up to speed where Branford is in terms of its regs, its applications, processes, and how those can continue to serve Branford in a meaningful way. From that, I'm going to just start share my screen so I can go over the assessment, which is section 6. And I'm going to really quickly. So after really digesting a lot of that, and it was a pretty short time frame, so I don't want to say this is an authoritative report and that it's 100% thoroughly done. It was really a quick review of what is available, and then a quick consultation with stakeholders in the commission. And from that, here's sort of the sense of where I am getting. And the opportunity tonight is really to sort of continue a little bit of that discussion to verify is this heading in the right direction, and then sort of get a sense of as I go forward, what makes sense for the commission to take on as sort of its workload, especially looking really into the fall. So the assessment, I think there's sort of this opportunities right now to get a balance of what is necessary complexity for the regulations so that it adequately addresses the challenges that Branford is facing, but also trying to construct them in a way that's user-friendly from processes, systems, so using technology, but also just clarifying what we mean by in the regulations. So making sure that our intent is actually clear so we can carry it out and not get caught up in some things that I think some people find puzzling. And I'll get into one of those. The regulations, as I said, need to be clear and enforceable. It really is a challenge when staff are, if it's too much gray area within the regulations, it's hard to make sure that everything is compliant. staff has latitude to sort of ensure compliance. But whether it's vague, it really becomes a challenge. And then can we sort of use that a clear process to develop a predictable development process? Sort of the short-term things I'm really handling at a staff level that I think will be impactful in setting a stage for this is one, really getting a current zoning regulation available to the public. Over the past 5 years, there's been a number of zoning amendments adopted by the commission, which are not currently available in a zoning regulation document for the public. And here's a list of those amendments that have been adopted. I'm using John Goskowski while I still have him through the end of June. He's going through and putting these amendments into a new document so that we can then get a revised zoning regulation document available to the public and the commission in short order. He's probably going to have the draft done by next week. And then shortly after reviewing and making sure it's accurate, we'll have it go out to printing, get copies to the commission, and also put digital copies up on the town's website so that everyone can use these regulations that have really been around for a while, just not publicly available yet. The second is the town procured a system called OpenGov for permitting, and it's sort of working with the building department, engineering, inland wetlands, as well as planning and zoning. We're working to getting that where we can get it to be launched as a soft launch. I'm shooting for June 1st so that we can have digital permits that can be available to the public. And that soft launch is really with the understanding that there'll still be refinement that will need to be done in that, and with a target of August 1st, that system will be really running and operating in a manner that we find useful for the department. And I'm happy to sort of present that as time goes on. The other thing is we're formalizing the early plan review. Early plan review was sort of a process that happened after submission, and the other departments find to be very useful. I want to see it to be more consistent. Building, engineering, and the wetlands, water and sewer, and health have all commented to that fact. Well, I'm looking to actually place this before formal submission to make this really a voluntary early plan review process that can really head off a lot of issues, reduce the amount of conditions that need to be applied on applications for items that really should just be incorporated as part of the application, so that we can just really focus on conditions on what is really necessary to make the project not just compliant, but also an improvement over what is expected. The fourth item is really delegation of minor site plan reviews. There's been a couple of sort of ad hoc processes that have been developed. One is for modifications to site plans and modifications to site special exceptions. They're listed as in the regulations in the zoning code, but in the report, you'll see that I basically did a typology of what those modifications consisted of. And I think that's a real good framework with which to have a conversation with the commission about these types of modifications. Would they also lend themselves to be sort of a minor level site plan review or a zoning staff level site planning review? And there's opportunities there that to prevent things from coming to the commission as a site plan or as a special exception. But that is really a sort of a conversation that we need to have, and knowing what that looks like. And then the fifth is really the big one, and I think everyone is sort of familiar with 6.8. It comprises almost a third of your business that comes before the commission. And it looks to be a combination of awkward wording in the regulation and maybe even overlap of jurisdiction, especially within the wetlands. While I loathe to take out regulation wording because there probably was an intent to address something in the past, I think there is a need to add some phrasing into that section that trips up everyone. that really recognizes that there's activities under coastal area management district regulation in 5.1, and there's exclusions and exemptions in inland wetlands that are really just ignored by the 6.8 regulation. That might have a benefit to aligning the intent with all three regulations, and with grading, coastal area management, and inland wetlands, and might reduce the amount of special exceptions you see under this regulation. But the area that really trips us up is this distance. As you probably know, with Harry, you tried to reduce this distance, take place within 100 feet. I think you're trying to reduce it down to 25 for one and 50 for the other. I know how hard it is to get 100 feet is sort of the model language that the state adheres to. So trying to get them to sign off on something less than the model language is probably a non-starter. But I think they will completely recognize that the model language references or allows for exclusions and exemptions, and we already have those codified in our regulations. So let's sort of point to that instead. And then, so those are the 5 items I'm going to be working on over the June to September. Most of these are done at a staff level. There's not much that needs to be done by the commission. But this sort of having a conversation about minor site plan reviews, and then a conversation about 6.8, whether or not that's something you want to tackle. I would like to have that, but in a more formal environment where we just sort of dedicate specific time to these 2 items on a future agenda. The more significant items that I'm sort of pointing to in the document is really about, whether or not there's appetite to revisit some other items in the regulations, like what constitutes a complete application that comes before the submission. What is the standards of conditions that site plans and subdivisions are need to adhere to? A lot of these we're putting conditions of stuff that is already in the regulations, but for some reason hasn't been included in the applicant's submission. My hope is early plan review and formalizing that will address that significantly, but more, I don't know if we need to always reiterate what our regulations state and require conditions to that fact. The next is, the level of the uses, what's a site plan review, what's a special exception review? Should we have some thresholds to sort of figure out, is there a significant and a minor level of these type of uses where something significant, such as a building over 5,000 square feet or an impact of over 5,000 square feet on a lot, would come to the commission, and something below that, would that make sense to have it as a staff level? Chapter 6, Harry had issued an RFP to hire a consultant to really go through Chapter 6, which is our basic standards in the zoning regulations. That means like anything that deals with parking, signage, lighting, grading, and other sort of basic standards, landscaping that we want to establish are all contained in that chapter and applied to every single sort of permit, site plan, and special exception. How much do we want to move forward on really tackling that chapter? And then 5 is really, the plan of conservation development really recommended relooking at a number of districts. These are the ones that I pulled out from the POCD. So they said, relooking at the town center. I think they said it was fairly complex. There's many different zones in the town center. You have the BC zone, the BR zone, the R1 zone, and then you have overlay zones as well, the town village district and the Main Street overlay district. And then to throw in that, you have the potential for PDDs and age-restricted affordable development housing, and that also come into play. And does that lead to the type of predictable development that you anticipate or whatnot? There are different approaches that might be worth looking into, such as form-based code strategies, but that would require a significant, I think, educational process, a significant charrette process to understand what type of form codes would need to be developed. And that would be a lengthy endeavor, whether or not the commission has the appetite to do that. And then again, even through the end of the year, if we were to start looking at this, this point, it would just be exploratory. We wouldn't be ready for regulations this year. That would I would push that off until 2026. And then obviously in 2026, we need to start working towards a 2027 affordable housing plan. So the purpose of this list is really to sort of say the scope of things that we could do. And my hope here is really to have a conversation about, one, what's feasible, two, what you find to be as a priority. And then really, I would take that information and sort of refine this as some sort of action plan. And you can also tell me that we're maybe not ready to undertake much of this. And we'll just focus on one of these items now, and then we can tackle the next one later. I have no blueprint yet. I'm still trying to figure out what it looks like. And this is part of that conversation to help me. So if there's any comments, I appreciate it now, but I'm also open to any emails or communications or one-on-ones outside of the commission meeting.
Chuck Anders, Chair. Thanks, McKeel. McKeel, do you want to have I sort of glanced through it, and I know it's a draft and all the disclaimers that you mentioned, but do you want to schedule another time, an hour or two where we can go over some of this in detail, or what?
Yeah.
Suggestions?
Well, yeah, certainly the suggestion is that a normal commission meeting is probably not the best format to dive into something like this. I wanted to be respectful for your time, but also to give you guys the space to really focus on something like this, because it is fairly broad. And a special meeting probably makes sense, and a special meeting, whether or not in person or remote, I'll defer to the commission's sort of desire. I think a special meeting, if we looked at maybe, I know the summer's coming on quick, but something in July, if that's not too, I don't want to jump in, or June is also a possibility.
Okay, why don't we throw that out? I know summer's, and we take August off in theory. But what do people think of that? I don't know if people have had a chance to even take a look, an overview. It's like 50 pages, and there's some pretty interesting stuff in there. And it's frankly, if I were just walking into a town, I would do what McKeel did. And sometimes we're blind because we've just been sitting here and we assume things. And when I read it, I thought, oh yeah, okay. You don't even see it anymore. You just assume this is what we're dealing with. And so it was a chance to step back a bit. So, but there was a lot of big picture stuff. I think the smaller stuff that you were mentioning, McKeel, is probably the way you start. We don't want to be too ambitious. Yeah. But I guess the immediate question is, do we have the desire or ability to have a special meeting in June or July where we can spend an hour or two kind of going over some of what McKeel is talking about? So I'm going to ask everyone, Joe Chadwick, because your name's at the top of the list, Joe. So you always go first.
I'll always take the hit for you, Chuck.
Thanks, Joe.
Yeah, I'm perfectly willing. I'm actually quite anxious to dive into this. There's a lot of very interesting concepts in there. I have never been bashful about expressing my desire to strunk and white all over the place on the current zoning code. But yeah, I would just probably be cautious about calling this an audit, in that an audit is something that is measurement against standards. And it's really a survey more than it is an audit, because I don't want to give this, turn this into something that someone could use as a political football later. So I have heard people use the term audit in very strange ways in other situations in town. And I would just be cautious about that piece of language. But yeah, I'm happy to dive into it, and really happy to see form-based zoning even just show up as an aside of a mention.
Thanks. And Joe, you'd be good for a special meeting sometime in June or July?
Yeah,
okay,
absolutely.
Great.
Just as long as it's not in the middle of the day.
Right. Fred?
I'm available. You know, if you're going to hold a special meeting, I will definitely be there.
Okay, great. Marcy? Yeah, you're mute, Marcy.
Can you hear me now? It's Marcy.
Yes.
I just want to commend Michelle on everything he's been doing so far. You know, I'm hearing how responsive he is to things, and I really appreciate the overview, you know, taking, you know, step back and really trying to get your arms around what we are and what we aren't. And a lot of times I think, you know, we need to do it ourselves. You know, I often feel that a lot of what we do on the commission is a sort of piecemeal application of our regs against an application. And I, I really value the town as a whole, and some of the questions like Sharon had mentioned earlier, you know, how are those appropriately integrated or not into the regulations, you know, things with level rise, things with, you know, TODs. But I would love to kind of get a list of what you presented so that I can write my own notes and be prepared and read up a little bit more on form-based zoning. I've heard I've heard of what it is, but I'm not confident I know enough about it, but I'm very curious about it all the same. So, you know, I can meet whenever, anytime.
Great. Thanks, Marcy. Massimo?
Yeah, sure. I mean, how could I say no, right? Everybody's putting in such valiant effort here that you know, I'm definitely in. Absolutely.
Great. Thanks. Sharon?
Yes, I also appreciate all of the work that Mikhail has done so far in the short time that he's here, and really has put together this document that kind of summarizes so much of what is going on for the Planning and Zoning Commission, that I am anxious to get in there and have a meeting and discuss some of these things, which I found really interesting. So I'm free June and July, except the week of July 11th. And also, I was very happy to see that the POCD played a really big role in some of Mikhail's comments, because I think that we should really take a look at that document and use that to aid us in some of the direction that we take for Branford. And the other issue that concerns me is enforcement, because we could have the best regulations in the world, but if we don't have a suitable way to enforce them, then I think we'll just be spinning our wheels. So I would love to get Mikhail's take on how he would see that, as what the best enforcement team would look like, to eliminate some of the issues that we've had in the past, where applicants have gone ahead and done various things to their property and then have come to the commission and asked for forgiveness. So I would like to see if we can eliminate some of that. Thank you.
Thanks, Sharon. And if we do enforcement, obviously Jane would be involved too.
Can I jump in on that note?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, enforcement is kind of after the fact. I think that leads to what happens before the fact, which is really educating the public about and simplifying the regs so that they know when they need to come and when they don't, and what constitutes, just, I don't know how the best way to do that, but maybe it's updating the web page, making it more user friendly. But, I think it just comes down, we were getting more and more new residents into town. And there's sort of an old guard, new guard, you know, politics sometimes that happens. And, I love that. I don't mind calling it an audit, but like there's so much with AI, for example. I'm curious how oftentimes when we're trying to make a change to the regulations, we're comparing ourselves to other towns that we think fit or don't fit. But, I'd like to think for ourselves and then sort of see how it compares and, see if AI is going to, you know, simplify it in ways that we might not anticipate. I don't know. But there's just lots of new ways to brand ourselves and present our regulations that I think would be fun to explore. Which is why I'm curious about the form-based zoning idea in particular. I think we've done the POCD quite a bit. Whether that's getting translated effectively. I know we've reviewed that, since I've been on the commission, and it's that theory that how do you take theory to get it into application. But
Thanks, Marcy. So it sounds like a consensus. Yes, let's try to get a special meeting in June or July. I know schedules are up all over the place. I know I'm going to Italy for like 10 days at the end of June and beginning of July with my son. So, I think we're just going to have to, I don't know, send a calendar out, see, start from staff, Michelle and Nikhil, maybe you can, and Jane, figure out something where we could get something. The next question would be in person or online. I mean, frankly, I wouldn't mind an in person. We may be able to actually see people, for just a once off. So we're not creating any precedent, but I don't know. What do people think about that?
does it need to be a public official meeting, or is this a work session amongst the commission?
It's a meeting. Anytime we meet, it's a meeting. If it has to be advertised, but whatever. I mean, no one show up. I mean, but it would be a work session where we wouldn't take any votes. But it have to be open to the public. We have to find a location to do it, and
advertise it and televise it.
Yeah, we have to schedule it just like any meeting. We don't have to put it in the newspaper, but we have to file in the town clerk's office, just like any town meeting meets. Right. I mean, we do that whether it's online or or in person.
Well, I was just curious if it was going to be filmed for like BCTV, that kind of a meeting, or sometimes we have work groups where it's we have the community in, and it's only two of us from the commission, and
right. Yeah, I don't know. That's interesting. Yeah, maybe we don't have to have it videoed. I don't know. Yeah.
No, the recording is largely because of public hearings, and if this is really just a meeting and not a business meeting, I don't think we have to televise it, but I can double check.
No, we have had transportation-oriented district meetings and meetings for POCD that were announced but never recorded. Mm-hmm. So just so long as they're published, I think that's unless there's been a change in the regulation. But a lot of those, the affordable housing committees, those were advertised but never recorded.
Yeah, I don't think we have to video. There's no requirement we do. But what are your thoughts about in person versus online?
I think in person is preferable so that we can get a little bit more face-to-face kind of discussion. And, that's why I was sort of suggesting a more workshop-oriented type of meeting as opposed to a more formal meeting where we're, we don't know what our conclusions we're going to make and some of the way that, we're leaning on the commission. We tend to all kind of come together in the end, but, there could be certain topics that, I'd want to feel free to, get passionate about certain things and not have to watch what I say too much.
Okay. So in-person workshop type of thing. What others have thoughts?
I agree. Sharon Hutner, I think in person would work for this kind of meeting.
I agree also. Massimo. Yeah.
Good.
Could I bring
Okay.
something? Could I bring something up real quick? While
Sure.
we're on the subject, just real. Well, you know, I'm seeing. We're approving a lot of apartment buildings, and it seems like, Mikhail brought up that we have to go over some more, future affordable housing. So it seems like we're gonna be probably, well, if you have the land, then you could build more apartment buildings, and it fits our rules and regs. We're probably gonna approve them. Um, and then we talked about like enforcement, like and you brought up Jane, Chuck. You know, is there anything, and I've run into this for the first time in my life, is there anything that this commission can do or suggest to the town of Branford to have certain rules and regulations for the future of the tenants that live in Branford by the landlords, right? So it seems like, so I'm a tenant, and I ran into a situation personally that it's just a completely horrible situation. And there's nowhere for me to really turn to. You know, I've turned to, um, the police, and they're like, you got to go. It's a civil matter. I turned to the health department, and they did what they can, but it also ends up turning into a civil matter. And then it got suggested, well, we do have a New Haven county um, um, that we could turn to. I've reached out to the New Haven County Housing Authority, and there's nothing there that will help the residents and tenants of the town of Branford. There's really nowhere you can turn to. So the more affordable. Now, I'm fortunate enough I could hire an attorney. The more what I'm looking at in this future is that if we're going to have more affordable housing in this town, and we have some really bad landlords. See, a lot of times it's bad tenant, right? That's most of the problem, but sometimes it's a bad landlord. And where does this tenant go to? And that can't afford an attorney. I think we have to really be aware of this issue in the future, because we're going to have more and more tenants in this town, it seems like. And how do we put something like that in a reg or a regulation or an enforcement policy for this town? It seems like we need housing authority in this town. We're having that many apartment buildings going up.
Thanks, Massimo. I think that's not really it's a housing or a landlord tenant issue. It's less of a zoning issue. And I don't know if the town has a housing code. If the issue is the condition of the premises, you can have a separate sort of housing code. There are health issues that are a violation of health code in a condition of a premises that could be a violation. It depends on what is going on. But I really don't put those in the zoning category. I mean, other than the deed restrictions for affordable housing, that you have to make sure that the person, that the units are in fact rented to persons who are qualified at the qualified income levels, making sure that that is enforced, that the units are given to the population that they're intended for, and you don't cheat. So I mean, so there's that side of it. But as to just housing conditions in general, I mean, those are real. And I know there's issues about rent. I think towns now have to have a fair rent commission if you're over a certain amount. I think Branford has established one of those. But in terms of the condition of the thing, I think you're probably right. It probably defaults mainly to private stuff. I mean, you withhold your rent, you get in fights, but it's not. I don't think there's a particular agency, and there may be a housing code, but that's kind of a different issue.
New Haven has some sort of enforcement arm from the Livable Cities Initiative.
Yeah, LCO.
And,
New Haven.
Right. And I don't know but that, again, that's something that we aren't able to regulate, something that would have to be done through town ordinance. And
if there's a housing code, could be some certifications that year you get inspections and things like that, or that's who you complain to. You're right. I think New Haven does the LCO, the Living Cities Initiative, whatever, that they kind of look at those things, even though I don't know how much they do. Marcy.
I know in real estate, when you're have you know, oh, I lost Sharon. She started sharing her her screen. Um, when you have an FHA mortgage, there's a definite checklist that the federal government puts you through as far as the condition of the home and lead and all of those kinds of things, which really doesn't extend to housing. But I think where the connection for Massimo is, because I've heard some things of late that are very concerning. I mean, everybody knows that I do a lot with real estate, and I know that there's a lot of market rate housing that's not deed restricted and doesn't get counted towards our affordable count, which is extremely frustrating that, we 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 can't get the state to include, our mobile homes or, private rentals that are market rate, because I think we would have enough affordable housing, and I think we bend over backwards to bring in new deed restricted affordable housing. And there's, other communities that don't need the grant monies from the state, and so they're not as worried about it. And like there's that connection between if we if we have enough affordable housing based on their percentage, the way they look at it, then we're eligible for the tax relief or abatements or whatever as a result of it. But I've heard things about, organizations in New Haven, you know, uh, supplementing rents for homeless in Branford and these sort of cross community kinds of things that, you know, concern me about not the current status of certain situations, but what happens if a private organization leaves, and maintaining the quality of the affordable housing that we do have, and if it's dependent on the landlord to maintain it, you know that concerns me a little bit, that there's always that give and take, where when you're working with, say, a Section 8 tenant, there's requirements that the for fair housing, the landlord needs to consider the Section 8 tenant, but also that the housing is sufficiently maintained. And I've gone into a number of places that weren't, not so much in Branford, but that weren't. And so it's a real issue about how that all ties together in my mind. And some of it starts with what we approve for zoning and how that works. And some of it I feel is being forced on us because of the way the state runs things, and isn't really accurate, to the picture of what's on the ground. And that's what troubles me the most. Not that we want to provide affordable housing, but that, we're not being given credit for the affordable housing that we do inherently provide. So, I mean, that's just my 2 cents on it, I guess.
Thanks, Marcy. And I don't want to, I just, exercise my right as chair to pull us back. This is, again, we're going to schedule, I'll sort of summarize, a special meeting, a workshop type of meeting to review I don't call audit / survey, that'll be the subject matter with Mikkel, and sort of get the sort of outline of the time frame of the things he was talking about. And do that sometime in June and July. That's the consensus I see. So I think, Mikhail, does that work, or
yeah, that helps me significantly. I will send out a poll for timing, and when looks like I have something that looks like it might work, I'll let the commission know. And if that is a good time, I'll go ahead and schedule it as a meeting of the commission with the proper notices that's required, but also not making this we don't have to make this a televised meeting beyond, and we're not going to be conducting business. It's really just a workshop to help guide what we might look to do in the future.
Great. Thanks, Mikhail. Massimo, if you want to call me, just call me sometime. You have a specific issue, I'll share whatever I know about, landlord tenant stuff. So, anything else, Mikhail?
That was the only item I had for the planner's report. So appreciate you guys indulging me in having this conversation. I look forward to more. I want to make sure it's structured and not, we're using up planning commission time as a result. So thank you for having this conversation with me.
Great. Thanks, McKeel. Anyone else have anything? If not, then I guess we're open for a motion to adjourn if someone wants to go that route.
Chadwick makes that motion.
Motion to adjourn by Joe Chadwick. Is there a second?
Marcy, a second.
Second, Marcy. Any further discussion? All those in favor, Joe Chadwick.
Joe Chadwick is in favor.
Fred Russo.
Fred Russo's in favor.
Marcy.
Marcy's in favor.
Massimo.
Massimo's in favor.
And Chair is also in favor. So thank you, everyone. And see you next time. All right. Good night.
This program was brought to you in part through the support of the Town of Branford. Watch town meetings and other videos on demand at BranfordTV.org.